I will be joined by Amanda Dyer. Um, and yay. Hey,
Yeah.
Amanda. Thanks for being here. So, Amanda is director and producer of Unseen, and really grateful to you for spending the evening with us. And I'd like to welcome anybody who has any questions for Amanda or wants to just put out their reflections on the film for us to kind of process together because it is a lot to process. We'd love to open up the chat box and the floor. Um, Lots of thank yous coming in to you, Amanda, for creating this film and for validating all of us. And I guess that's
Actually,
kind of
I haven't watched it all the way through in a while myself, so you all are gonna get me. It's, it's very fresh because yeah, you think I've watched it 1,000 times, it doesn't even affect me anymore, but I'm glad to say it still does.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of extraordinary. I think really speaks to like your heart for continuing to kind of be open to the rawness of that and the honesty. And I imagine it was quite a trip to try to collect those stories and to witness them and start to put them together in a really organic but beautiful way. Um, I just want to step back and say I love the imagery of the broken crystal ball. Is that what it's supposed to be right at the beginning, where they're kind of imagining what your life with a child's going to be? And we all think, I think, when you first dream of the idea of becoming pregnant or having a family in whatever form, there's this vision. And it's amazing how it just gets absolutely shattered at that moment of diagnosis, whenever that moment occurs. And I love just seeing the kind of broken glass throughout. I was like, oof, yes, that rings so true. And you're kind of
Yeah,
putting
that's
something back together. Yeah.
right. Yeah, we have Jess to thank for that metaphor, the mom in the film, because she's a writer and poet and expresses herself very creatively. And at some point when we were talking, she used that metaphor about like this glass ball, and Tom and I were like, okay, I think we can use that. Like that's something so visual that everybody can relate to. And you're right, like we just actually we filmed that scene in this very room right here. Had a whole setup with like a screen to get the reflection, and so it was kind of a technical process. But to get that idea across of you have all these vision, and I think that's something relatable to if you're not a caregiver too, like whether you have kids or don't, even you can imagine, everybody can kind of imagine what you picture that life to be. And so that was so fitting that it just changes it. And then I like how she goes on to say like it blows up your expectations, but that just now you have the opportunity to make a new path. And unfortunately, that path is not as full of support and resources as we want it to be. But that's kind of the world you've entered now, is figuring out what that path is going to look like for you and your family.
Mm. How did you start get started with this film? What inspired you, or how did you get involved?
Yeah, no, that's always such a good question because it's actually not our personal story. My husband and I we're not caregivers. We don't have children. Which is also why we have time to make a documentary on the side. So so there's that. But it started just, somewhat of just kind of a creative idea. Like he works in film and video production. I have a creative agency, so we both work kind of in, doing creative projects. So we knew like the nuts and bolts of how to make something, like he knows how to make a movie type of thing. But we just thought, we watch documentaries all the time. Wouldn't it be fun to make our own, like work on something together, just as a creative exercise where it's not about our clients, it's about like just doing what's our vision. And we were like, yeah, but what's it going to be about? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have any ideas. We'll just see what comes along. And the crazy thing is, not 2 weeks after that conversation, I saw a post on Facebook that was like a friend of a friend. The friend we have in common is not even someone that I see you know how social media world is, like who knows who knows
Mhm.
what you're seeing. But this post said, I've always thought we needed a documentary about what it means to be a caregiver because people just have no idea of what's going on behind the scenes. And I thought, oh, that is kind of interesting. Like I certainly don't know like what does she mean? I don't what is going on behind the scenes. So I looked her up, and it turns out Jess was the person who had written that post, and she lived 30 minutes from us here in Nashville, which just again seemed like too good to be true. So I reached out and was like, hey, we had this, I saw your post, we've had this idea. Would you be willing to just meet us to chat about this? And to her credit, she took a leap of faith and was like, sure, I'll talk to these random people who were like, let's make a documentary. So we chatted through it. They told us a lot of their story, and we were just blown away because I mean, we just never heard anything like it. And it was their story was so compelling. I mean, the aspects of like being a blended family and them both losing a spouse, like being caregivers for a spouse with terminal illness and then becoming parent caregivers. And like, it was just so, so many things that was almost overwhelming. But we did have a little bit of skepticism, like, is this just like a really unique one-off story when they started telling us about like they had moved to Tennessee and there's all these barriers of getting support. And we were like, have they just had a little bit of bad luck, or is this common? So we put out a request for caregivers to send us like just little testimonial videos about like, answer these couple of questions and send us your story. And that was the turning point, I think, is when we got those
Mhm.
videos from dozens of caregivers from all over the country. I mean, saying the same things over and over, like, it's 24/7. It's 24/7. We have no support. I haven't had a break in a decade, like just these things that we heard over and over, that really opened our eyes to like, okay, this is not just we happen to meet one family with this situation. Like this is so widespread. And we looked at what other media was out there, and we saw a lot of like the positive aspects of things, like the joy and love and sacrifice that come from caregiving, and like the elder care side of it. And so there was all that there, but we just didn't see anything that was this parent side that kind of gave caregivers room to talk about all facets of it. And so just little by little, we just took this. I mean, we didn't know, we knew how to put it together, but we didn't know what to do with it or how to fund it, or like we didn't know. So we just took little baby step along the way, and then somehow we got it together. But yeah, so we started as, I think, from like a journalist type of perspective, like let's just tell the story and capture it. And then it really became so compelling to us that, now we feel more like on the advocacy side that we have to use the skills we have to help tell the story and make the changes that we want to see.
Mm. Well, whatever started as just a creative exercise has done a lot more than that, and I think created a lot of good and probably initiated quite a bit of advocacy. I think when you feel like, this one-off story, is this just a one-off story? When you're living it too, it can feel a little bit like you're a one-off story, right? But then to be like, oh, I am living the same experience of many others,
Mhm.
you're more willing to step up and try to change things. So,
Yeah.
um,
I remember talking to someone, a mom, who said that just I think even late after it was out, who said like I genuinely thought I was the only person who felt this way or was struggling or like couldn't get it figured out. And she's like I literally thought that. And now it seems kind of like, of course not. Like that can't be possible, but there is so much isolation to it, and you don't hear these other stories that I think it's more common than you would think for caregivers to feel like this must just be me. Something's off with me. I can't figure it out. I'm the problem, not the broader system. So that's some of the coolest feedback I think we get, is people realizing like this is what showed me I'm not the only one, and that alone brings some comfort and validation.
I think that's why I was like writing down all these little quotes from all these different caregivers, because I was like, that's exactly how I've thought about that before. Oh my gosh, it was all
Yeah.
these like moments where I'm like, oh, yes, me too.
Someone
Um,
said once, did you all read my journal? Like I feel like I say the same things. So, and I mean, like I said, we like pull, we owe that to the caregivers who are willing to share, be open, put things out there that are vulnerable to say. And that's totally, we're indebted to them for being trusting us with their stories and that and letting us put it out there. Because I think that's what gives others the permission to, you know, feel validated, feel seen by hearing everybody else do it. But somebody had to kind of go first and be willing to put it out there.
Yeah, for sure. At No Rare, I think we have a little tagline that's like, we're all rare together. And it's like, once you start to zoom out and like the lived experience is universal.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
actually that rare when you look at the group. Yeah.
we have, let's see, we have two different questions that I want to touch on. One is from Bunny, and it's thinking about what are some recommended action steps that others can take to develop resources for caregivers and to be of help to them? Um, I'd love to flag the resources that I've seen on your website, but why don't you
Yeah.
take that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, to start there, we do have quite a bit on our website that we've created for different use cases. So, like, there's a toolkit for workplaces, for healthcare practices, for faith communities. There's also just like guides about, 12 ways to support a family caregiver, things like that. So, and those again are all compiled from, those aren't just like out of my, I didn't make them up. Like, they're from interviews and conversations with caregivers. So that's a good place to start to check that out. But what I always like to see people thinking about is, think about just where your realm of influence is. Like, not everybody is going to be on, Capitol Hill doing some kind of legislative action. Like that, we do need people to do that, but that's not for everyone. So where can you make a difference? So if it's that your neighbor is a caregiver, can you just ask if they need anything before you run to the grocery store? Like just the little things like that go such a long way. Or if you're a manager at a company, you probably have caregivers that are in your workforce, even if you don't realize it. So, can you advocate for policies that would be more caregiver friendly, like, flexible hours or remote work or something like that? So, I think there's very tangible ways. We need broader systemic change, of course, but there's still a lot of ways that are practical that we can all do in the meantime while these other things move very slowly. There's so many ways you can do the next thing that's right in front of you. And if you are the caregiver, I think it's being prepared to actually tell someone when you need something. I hear from so many that it's like, oh, it's just more trouble than it's worth to ask, or people say like, let me know, but they don't actually mean it. And of course that's true. Of course it's lip service at times, like one of the moms says in the film. But I do think there are people who genuinely want to help and just don't always know what to do. So like having in your mind, like these are the three things if someone says it that I will ask them that they could actually do, and being willing to like, yeah, the first two times it might not actually be more help if someone helps, but if they stick around and will kind of get the hang of it, then it becomes, an actual help to you. So I know it's hard to do that. That's a job in itself sometimes, but I genuinely think there's people that do care. They just don't always know. So we have to start with that educating step.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've just recently, like, I had this recurring issue on Monday afternoons where I had to be taking care of my son, kind of getting him off his school bus and like managing his acute needs right at the end of the school day. And my daughter needed pickup at the same time. And I was like rushing through it and trying to stuff him in the car. And then I was like, I should just ask somebody to drive her home from school. And now it's just a given. Like it's not a carpool that's shared. I don't ever do the pickup, but that mom knows to bring my daughter home. And like, I wouldn't have thought that I could ask for that, like in unequal relationship in a carpool situation. But I'm like, look, my needs are greater in this moment, and it's worked out great.
And I think people are more understanding of
Those
that
little
than,
things.
yeah, yeah. Because you also get something as the helper. Like you feel good to be a helper as well. So I think we sometimes forget that it's not, people help out of wanting to feel like a good person as well. So I
Yeah.
think it's, and you'll get some no's, you'll get some, people who you don't get the reaction you want, but you have to ask because you never know what someone's perfectly willing to and happy to do.
Yeah, for sure. And Nina just added reaching out to organizations in your area to see if there are resources you may not know about. Sometimes you'll be surprised if there's someone who cares and will give you a resource to help. And I fully respect that. And it's another thing on the to-do list. So it's a both and. It's can be sometimes so hard to make that call. And I've made a lot of calls recently that have come up without a ton. Um, I
Yeah,
feel
I
comfortable
went
looking
through
back on
that.
Nina because we have a
Yeah,
good
I
working
mean
relationship.
that's something we try to do at No Rare was we try to refer people to resources when we can. But my own personal experience was I have a nephew who's very similar to Lucas, who's also not toilet trained and is not verbal and was getting older. And your resources, diminish as a child gets older. And I think one thing that resonated with me in this film is the parents were saying that they know, when you care, I care for an elderly parent, but you know that there's a finite end to it. But when you care for a child, there is no end to it. And you worry about what's going to happen when you get old yourself or you can't care for them. And one of the things that happened was my nephew has, needs extreme care like this. He was getting older and my brother got cancer and he was terminal. And my sister-in-law was incapable of caring for a 16-year-old kid on her own, boy, who was, twice her height. And so I was desperate, I was trying to help, everybody was trying to help, and we had a short time frame because my brother was dying. And I reached out to like a special needs organization in the area, and lo and behold, I found somebody who really cared, and she was able to get my nephew into a group home, even though he was young. He was like 15, 16, you had to be 17 or 18. But she got him in a group home where he would be in the group home 5 days a week and be with my sister-in-law on the weekends.
Mm,
So that gave her, like a lot of them were saying about respite. And also, he had the resources because it was a group home for adults who were like him. So they had a lot of the resources to deal with him. And it took a little bit of the burden off of her, but she's still caring for him and she sees him every weekend. And, he's with her every weekend, but she has that balance. And it was just a luck that we found that talked to one woman in one organization who cared and thought of this idea, which was a little out of the box to do, but it worked, So that's what I'm saying. You don't even know what may be out there, and sometimes you just have to bang on a lot of doors until you find the answer. And unfortunately, it's very stressful to do that. But having help or finding some organization or some friend who will help you or a family member who can help you do that is really, can make a huge difference. And I think, being unseen, I think the other thing that she just was saying in the film is that she feels like people turn away because they don't want to like recognize it or don't. And I think we've dealt with it on Road No Rare too, because we've had some articles about how the discomfort of other people talking to you when you have a child or a family member or you yourself have something wrong with, have a problem, and people just don't know how to respond to it. So how do you engage in a conversation with somebody, even say that you need help, like you were saying, Laura? How do you feel comfort to do that? We've had articles about how do you feel comfortable asking for help? That's a huge
mhm,
deal. It really is. So I think that there's a lot of steps you have to go in your own evolution to get yourself comfortable to ask for help to begin with, and then be able to find the resources to look for help.
mm. Well said. And actually, that's a really good bridge to Robin's question here in the chat box. Was a rumor was started perhaps about another film coming up in response to this one. Is
Mm.
that true? We need so much more coverage on what we do with our loved ones in order to prepare for their future and for our future. She notes here that Jess was able to create a home for Luke and others, but how do we create those homes as well? We need more of this. As many of us move into the preparation stage of the future, we as caregivers, we need and deserve retirement dates so we can care for ourselves and others as well. So curious, is there a sequel?
Yeah, the rumor's true. I think we started the rumor, so that's okay.
Awesome.
There's I wouldn't call it a sequel per se, but it is kind of a byproduct of working on unseen for sure. It's the new project is called Uncertain. And we started it because after all this work on Unseen, the structure of it is kind of that it moves through the different you talk about the mental health, the physical health, the financial, like workplace, all these things, and one of the sections is they're talking about the long-term care plan, like what we don't know what's going to happen, it keeps me up at night. And so, in a 50 some minute film, that's like a couple of minutes. And we just found that there was a lot more to talk about in that area specifically. Because so many caregivers I talked to would say, like, I can deal with, there's a lot of hard stuff, but I can get through that if I just know that there's a plan for when I can't do it. Like I could sleep at night if I knew that when I couldn't provide the care, they were safe, cared for, had a good life, thriving. Like that's really at the end of the day, that's the thing that's driving everyone. So we through some different connections and someone seeing unseen and connecting with us with these other people, things like that, how those things always work. We've started working on this other film called Uncertain that really focuses on that question. It's a much different tone because two of the main storylines involve comedians. So one of them has a son with profound disabilities who lives in like a group home setting, and then one of them has a brother with like medium level support needs who lives independently with support from family members and some different providers and things. So their stories show kind of two types of situations and how they've like figured out solutions for the moment, but they're not sure if long term, how settled they are for the long term. And then Jess also is connected to that project because, like Robin mentioned, her and Ryan, and her husband ended up building a home for Luke and a couple of other folks that he lives with. But they have kind of a unique situation where Ryan is like a contractor who knows how to build things and renovate houses, and they live in a rural setting where property is pretty cheap. Like, their situation is cool that they figured out how to do that and went through all this red tape and stuff to make it work. But even that's not going to work for everyone. Not everyone can do that solution. So we've interviewed another family whose daughter has extremely high support needs, elopes. They have, found her outside running away. The police, like there's very complex behavioral situations where they've gotten turned away from almost every solution out there, like the most difficult of difficult cases. And they're just, they've already been full-time caregiving for decades now and trying to figure out like what are we going to do. So it's just there's so many questions around this. I mean, it's actually a very challenging project to really get to the bottom of like what is holding us back? Like, is it cultural, is it just like our society expectations? Is it our culture around care? Is it legislation? Is it we haven't advocated for the right things? Is it, like there's so many, it's been a real research project for us to figure out like what is going on? Like why don't we have options? And what are we doing knowing that the lack is only going to be getting exacerbated in the coming years. So yeah, we're in the thick. If you can hear my voice, I'm like, I don't know, but
I'm so excited.
So we're in the thick of it right now,
Awesome.
doing production. We're doing interviews and things. So we're definitely still in like fundraising and partnering mode. So yeah, we're looking for people to get involved. If you go to that website is uncertaindoc.com. So if you want to learn more about it, you can go there. There's also some ways to like send in your story the same way we have in Unseen. So some fun
Cool.
stuff
We
like
can
that.
send that or include that in our follow-up too for people who attended and signed up for the 72-hour viewing.
Yeah. Hmm.
'Cause that sounds like a really extraordinary next step. So yeah, I was gonna like kind of wrap things up by just thanking you so deeply for making this film, but now I'm seeing that, I guess somebody has a quote at the end that says, "It begins with seeing us." And you're not just seeing us, you're seeing us and then continuing to lean in a really extraordinary way. And I will need to watch that film. I'm like Lou's dad. I don't make 5-year plans anymore because it just doesn't work. And so it'll be really nice to be able to kind of peel back that curtain and feel comfortable there. So thank you, Amanda, and thank you all for being here.